Hooray! I think that means we're live, which means I am a gray box. But, oh man, just a second. I'm hearing the sound twice. There we go. But it's okay, I'm a gray box, because the true gems here are our guests. This is our queer book panel. At Rocat Reads, we love D&D, but we also love queer books. So I have gathered some amazing people here who are passionate about books in general and have a list of LGBTQ plus books that they're going to share with us. Let's just go ahead and start in the top corner. Sam McClean works at The Bookman. So our giveaway we just did for the gift card was donated by The Bookman, and they're providing expertise on selling books. So thank you, Sam. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, we're here in Chilliwack and Abbotsford, as you said. We have cats in the store if anyone wants to come down, and we're always happy to give more queer recs than I'm going to do here.
Awesome. Cats and books are basically the two best things.
Yeah, I agree.
We also have Chelsea. She is here representing librarians, which we all know also have amazing book recommendations. I'm in a book club with Chelsea that is covering an amazing book series, so I trust her completely. Chelsea, do you want to say anything to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm a librarian. I'm located in Toronto, Ontario, so not on the West Coast, and I'm really excited to talk queer books with everybody here.
Thank you. And we have Nicholas Eames, the author of Kings of the Wild and Bloody Rose. I don't have a copy of Kings of the Wild because Rachel's favorite thing is to buy it and then give it away to people. But thank you so much for joining us. Bloody Rose has a lesbian protagonist, and they're just so good. This is the perfect connection of D&D vibes, queer protagonist, and books.
It has that, yeah.
Would you like to introduce yourself in any other way?
Well, I mean, that about sums it up. Yeah, Nicholas Eames. I go by Nick, obviously, and yeah, I'm the author of 2 books so far, Kings of the Wild and Bloody Rose. They both have a bit of queer rep, but the second one, obviously, way more.
Awesome. Thank you. And so far, so hopefully we'll be getting a third someday.
Exactly.
All right, so we're just going to jump right in and start talking about some of the books that we love. Super excited for people to also jump in the chat and either be like, yes, I love this, or this one wasn't for me, or have you tried this one? Let's get a huge list going so that everyone watching can come away with hopefully at least one to add to their to be read list. And Nick, I think you are going to go first.
Sure, sounds good. I apologize in advance. I'm getting over a cold or COVID. I didn't test positive, but so if I clear my throat a lot, it's because of that. Better than a dry cough anyway. Yeah. Anyway, if anyone has any issues with the books, I recommend We're Gonna Fight. So you have to take a ferry over to Victoria. But anyways, my first book is by an author named Alex White. It's from a series called The Salvagers, the first book of which is called A Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe, which I must have given away or something like that, because I only have the second book here, which is called A Bad Deal for the Whole Galaxy. And then the third book of the series is called The Worst of All Possible Worlds. And as you will see from some of my other recommendations, I'm a huge fan of long-winded titles. Hence my love for like Becky Chambers books, The Lies of Locke Lamora. A book coming up is my favorite title of all time. So yeah, these titles I just absolutely love. They're so good. And the series itself is amazing. They are from Orbit, which is my publisher. And the books are very much like the 2 main characters are, at least in the first book, are a kind of a treasure hunter named Boot. She's kind of retired and she's like a bit of a swindler and an older woman. And then Nyla, who is like a magic race car driver, is I think the best way to describe it, which is so cool. I've never read anything quite like that in a book. And she literally kind of drives an intergalactic race car, but using magic. And yeah, things go off the rails pretty quick, but these 2 are kind of like thrown together with this huge mystery and put on board like a spaceship has a very, like the whole book itself and the whole series has very like vibes of TV shows and movies like Serenity or Firefly, which I know for nerds, at least, that's like a lot of their things. Like it's hard to find someone that has watched those shows and doesn't love them. So if you like that show, you'll love these books. They've got, you know, like a tight-knit crew, a lot of like intimate interactions in cramped hallways, a lot of, whether it's, you know, people going at it or people yelling at each other, it's always entertaining. And the books are fantastic. So I've read the first 2 of 3 so far. They've got like heists, jailbreaks, huge action set pieces, you know, friends becoming enemies, enemies becoming friends, all that good stuff. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, and Alex's next series, I haven't read it yet, but it just came out, and the first book of which is called Alex Kitko and the Mechas from Space, which is another awesome title. It's hard to miss on the shelves. It's like bright pink with like gold writing, and is part of a series called the Star Metal Symphony, which I think is just an awesome name too. So if you've already read The Salvagers, feel free to move on to that one.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's just go clockwise around the overlay. So Sam, I think that puts you next.
Yeah, sure. So my first one is The House in the Cerulean Sea. I don't have any of the books with me because I'm at work right now. So I could probably go scour the bookshelves, but that would take way too long. So The House in the Cerulean Sea is by T.J. Klune. It follows Linus, who is sent from the Department of Magical Youth to observe the 6 children in an orphanage who hailed by Arthur. And the children are really eclectic and fun. And it has a great love story between Arthur and Linus that just flows really naturally and is so lovely and sweet to read. And the part of the endorsement quote on the front cover by that's written by V.E. Schwab says that it's like being wrapped in a gay warm blanket. And it's such an accurate endorsement quote because it's exactly how that book feels. You can read it just so quick because it's just so comforting. And it really just like earns its happy ending, I think, because it just feels so natural and beautiful. And I just really love it.
Yeah, I've read that one. That's okay.
It's
Warm
so
hug
good.
is the perfect description.
Warm hug books are good.
Yes. Chelsea, what do you got?
All right, I'm going to start with The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson, which is one of the best debuts I've ever read. I'm still a little in shock that this is a debut novel. It's a sci-fi dystopia about identity and privilege that features complex plotting and intricate world building, compelling, well-developed characters. And it's set on an Earth where multiverse travel is possible, but there is one big catch. No one can visit a world where their counterpart is still alive. So in our protagonists' words, they needed trash people, poor, brown, and Black people, people somehow on the wrong side of the wall, even though they were the ones who built it. Enter Kara, who is a poor Black girl plucked from the rural wastelands because her life has been cut short on 372 worlds. It looks like her life is on track. She has an apartment in the city, an aloof but beautiful handler to flirt with. But then one of her few remaining doppelgangers dies under mysterious circumstances, and she's drawn into a plot that threatens the entire multiverse. Kara is such a great character. I love the fact that she both travels through worlds literally between 2 places, as well as the fact that she doesn't really belong in either the rural areas or this walled off city. She's a person who is sort of without a place but can walk between 2 places. And as she travels, she begins to see the impact that circumstances as well as choices can have on the different ways your life may turn out and how her life could have gone different directions. I love the fact that she's a strong character, that she is a survivor despite all the ways that she is marginalized as a queer, poor, Black woman who doesn't have citizenship. She still has an ability to care. And I found that really powerful, that even though there's a lot of darkness in this book, there are depictions of domestic violence, and yet it's profoundly moving to me that hope exists and she continues to care even when caring is dangerous.
Oh, that sounds really good too. I will continue the sci-fi theme and up the hope from like you have to search for hope in the midst of darkness to just pure hope. My first recommendation is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. And this is kind of my cheat to just recommend everything by Becky Chambers. I've heard her described as hope punk, just basically this idea of what if we had sci-fi stories that imagined that humans made good choices and we actually ended up better than we are now. So this is a sci-fi quadrilogy. Each book in these series of 4 interrelates, but you can read them in any order. This is the first. I think the strongest in my book, but they're each very different. So I think probably that depends person to person. This is, the way I describe Becky Chambers is, if you ever want to just really lean into characters and world building, and plot is second on your list of priorities, like it is for me a lot of the time, these are the books for you. She has some of the best world building I've ever read. She develops all of these different alien cultures. She expresses queerness in amazingly unique ways, planet to planet and species to species. And she just is a delight to read. They are sometimes a little slow because there's not a lot of plot, but just every page is full of goodness. And this is the series that I dole out very slowly to myself when I need something joyful to read.
Yeah, I second those books. They're phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still Gray Hole, do I wonder, on the screen? Are you still looking Gray Hole on the screen?
I'm a person now.
Okay. What? What'd you call me?
Yeah.
Yeah, a really good part of those books, and I think it's in the last book, the Alex White books I mentioned too, are found family. Like that's yes. A lot, like, you know, a theme that you see kind of a lot in queer books and in the community in general, and I love that about books as well. So
yeah,
the next one that I'm going to recommend has absolutely none of that. It's called The Traitor, Beru Cormorant. What you're looking at here is one of the greatest book covers to me ever made, and my favorite title of any book ever. This book, I often go on rants about how when it was published in England, they were on a kick of just shortening titles, so they just called it The Traitor, which to me is it just severs all of its like intrigue, because otherwise you're like, who's Beru Cormorant? What kind of name is that? But anyways, I love this book. It's about a young girl she's part of kind of almost like a South Pacific type culture. The author, by the way, is Seth Dickinson. And it's book 1 of a series called The Masquerade. Although it can be 100% read as a standalone. The series isn't finished yet. There's 3 books of 4 out, but it works very, very, very well as a standalone. Anyway, so she lives on this island. She has a mother and 2 fathers, and that's kind of like par for the course in her community. And then this kind of all world encompassing empire called the Masquerade comes along and colonizes them. And essentially they've got these ideals. I forget what the word they use is, but it's, you know, it's how to live proper lives and act proper ways, and something, especially in Canada, we can see, you know, we can kind of relate to in our own history. And so they, you know, one of her fathers has disappeared, and she gets kind of sent to this school that kind of teaches her the way of these people. And a lot of it is about, you know, like not being afraid of what they're going to do, but what they're going to make you think that you should do, and like how that kind of modify your way of thinking. So anyway, she's like a savant. She's like crazy with numbers, crazy with like strategy and things like that. And so she kind of decides to bring down this empire from the inside, and she gets sent to this like northern kingdom called Arduin that's kind of on the brink of rebellion, and she gets sent there to basically like bring it down, you know, and cause turmoil so that the empire can come in and swoop it up. So it's just got so much like kind of like intrigue, and she kind of like, there's this countess named Tan Hugh that she kind of like falls in love with, and in the end, I'm obviously not going to spoil it, but it's one of the few books not by an author named Guy Gabriel Kay that made me cry. I really stupidly read the ending in a coffee shop and was just like, oh, damn, this was a bad idea. So it's heartbreaking, and it has a really good ending. So if you want to just read this book, then go for it. But otherwise, it's got a sequel called The Monster Beru Cormorant and one called The Traitor Beru Cormorant.
Amazing.
Probably just called The Monster and the Traitor, The Traitor, the Tyrant. In England. So
amazing. Yeah. That's when you have to pull out those sunglasses in public of like
they're just fantastic books, and they're really, really, really incredible writing, just like stunning paragraphs.
I've only read the first one, but I loved it, and I've bought the others. I just have been waiting to read them all.
Yeah, it's good to have the second and the third, because the second book kind of famously got shoved out the door before it was quite ready. Mm-hmm. And so they're better read like together at once, I think.
right, Sam, we're back to you.
Yeah. All right. So my next one is Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. It's the second in the Brown sister series, but it can be read well enough as a standalone just because each book focuses on a different one of the sisters. I love this book because even though it's not a queer romance, it's between a man and a woman. The woman, titular Danny Brown, is bisexual, and I'm a firm believer in that a queer book doesn't need to have a queer romance, and just a main character is good enough because like not every bisexual person is going to end up with the same gender. A lot of them are going to end up with a different gender, and that doesn't make them any less bisexual. So this book follows Danny, who's a university professor, and Zaf, who is a security guard at the university. They have to like fake date, which is a great trope. After a video of them during a fire drill goes viral under the hashtag Dr. Rugbay. So it's this beautiful little romance book, and it's Zaf is a huge supporter of like defunding toxic masculinity, specifically in rugby. It's why they had to fake date for the publicity for his charity that he does for like young boys in rugby, and to like show them that emotions are okay and like you need to have emotions to play. And I just love it very much. Danny's ex, Josephine, is a prominent character, so Danny's bisexuality is never like shoved in your face, but it's never forgotten about, and she's this lovely modern day witch, and her characterization is really great.
I've read that one. It's very good. The dialogue is very sparky. It's great.
Yes.
Chelsea.
Okay, so I'm gonna, like Nick, keep it dark a little second here before I get on to some lighter stuff and talk about, this is one of my favorite underrated gems, Amberlow by Laura Elena Donnelly. It is part of a trilogy called the Amberlow Dossier. And when I finished this book for the first time, which was a few years back, I felt like I needed a stiff drink, a massage, because my shoulders were like this. I was so tense. And the next book in the series immediately, I just was like, oh my God. And it was one of those books where you get to the last page and like, on the one hand, it had me very moved and like emotionally invested. And I was missing the adrenaline high that came from being so caught up in the story. But I also wanted to reread it almost immediately. So it's really stuck with me. This is a secondary world book that is inspired, or secondary world fantasy inspired by Weimar Republic Berlin and set against the rise to power of a fascist regime. So a little depressing, but very timely in our troubled political times these days. I think there's a lot to take from it. It is an espionage thriller, but at its heart, it's really a story about people and the choices and the sacrifices that they make when they're under pressure. It's told through 3 viewpoint characters. One is the emotionally and physically scarred spy, Cyril, who becomes the turncoat in order to save his own life and the life of his lover, Ari. Ari, who is a smuggler and MC at the local Bumblebee Cabaret. And one of the Bee's dancers is the third character. Her name is Cordelia, and she is this clever, underestimated, and unashamed character. If you're a sucker for morally gray characters at all, or you want to be sort of examining your own morals a little bit, this is a book that you should pick up. I fell in love with the characters and their relationships with each other. I also really love the writing. Donnelly's prose is so atmospheric, it's sensual, it's very vivid, and this is one of my favorite underappreciated gems. I just love trying to shove this at people. Hasn't got the attention it deserves.
I'll stick
how many books are in that series? Sorry, can I ask really quick?
Yeah, there's just 3 of them.
Okay.
Are they all good?
They are all good. The middle book has a little bit of like, it's not my favorite book in the series, but the ending is like, oh, it lands the ending so well.
That's what matters. Yeah. Well, I'll stick with dark a little bit, but make it YA. This is Bruised by Tanya Bodeju. She's a local Vancouver author, and this is a YA book that's contemporary fiction set in Vancouver in the roller derby scene. Daya is the protagonist, and she has just recently lost her parents in a car accident and is having to develop found family both with her aunt and her uncle, but also with the community that she's meeting through roller derby. Why is she doing roller derby? Because she self-harms by bruising herself, hence the name of the book. And roller derby is a socially acceptable way to kind of meet that need while developing friends that are going to kind of ultimately lead to her healing and recovering from the worst of her trauma. As all good roller derby books are, it's full of queer characters. And this book has my all-time favorite coming out scene of any book I've ever read. When she comes out to her aunt and uncle, there is music, there are flags, there is embarrassing adults, embarrassing teens. It's just so much fun. And I highly recommend this if you are one of those people on the fence of like, sometimes YA seems like it doesn't deal with like intense real life things. This one does.
Oh, me again. So this one I feel kind of bad because it's not exactly an underrated book, and there are obviously too many out there, but I've chose The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, which I don't have because I listened to an audiobook. The problem with listening to Madeline Miller books on audiobook is that sometimes the writing's like so beautiful that you can't like pour over a page. So I have to rewind it over and over again. The last paragraph of this book, I think I was doing the dishes as I listened to it, and I was just like, oh my God. And I probably listened to it 13 times, just over and over and over, just so I could soak it in. Anyways, The Song of Achilles, Madeline Miller has two books that I know of at least out. The second one's called Circe or Kirk, or however you want to pronounce the Greek letters there. I don't think I've ever met anyone who pronounces it the same way. Anyways, they're both fantastic. The second one's from a female point of view or a woman's point of view. The first one's from the point of view of Patroclus, who is, of course, the lover of Achilles. I mean, obviously, if you're writing a book about, a Greek tragedy without queerness in it, you're just not writing it right. And so this book is, it's really, really well written. I'm sure it takes some liberties with the story, but who cares, obviously, to make it better. And it is fantastic. Like, it's got elegant prose, and the love story is I wouldn't really call it a slow burn per se, but Patroclus is like obsessed with Achilles, obviously, and the Achilles that she paints is pretty amazing, obviously, but not without fault. And their love story, although it's like very one-sided, it's not, so much so. Achilles is one of those characters that they're just obsessed, like we can see it unfolding in modern day with poor Tom Brady and Giselle, a man obsessed with glory, letting it destroy his love life. And there's just people like that out there that just, they can love somebody, but they're always going to love something else more. And for Achilles, it's glory. And so this story is as tragic as you expect it to be, and as beautiful as you could hope it to be. And yeah, if you haven't read it yet, it is absolutely phenomenal, as is her other book.
Agreed.
Yeah, Madeline Miller is such a powerhouse in her writing. It's incredible.
So good. Yeah, I feel bad my descriptions aren't as long as Chelsea's, but I'm just like raving, like, you gotta read it.
I'm the same way.
But that's great. That gives me more time.
Perfect.
My cat has appeared behind me.
Book cat.
This one is named Beatrix. She's one of our store cats.
Oh, that's a great bookstore cat name.
We have two by the same name. It's very funny. We adopted her with this name, and we named the other one Beatrix before, and then she just kind of showed up. Yes, you.
Does Beatrix have any recommendations?
Oh, many. She loves to sleep on books.
Yeah.
So my next one is I Kiss Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston, another very popular author, but I just can't not talk about them. I adore everything they write. And this one is just such a love letter to queer kids, especially those who grew up in small towns. It's their first foray into young adult, and it just works so well. They just have such a unique, awesome voice. It's just it is so specific to young kids, and it's just so much fun to read. Not young kids, but like late millennials and early Gen Z. It's about Chloe, Smith, and Rory all looking for Shara Wheeler after she leaves them clues for them all, after she kisses them all and then just disappears. And it's a great enemies to lovers. It has the fantastic representation that I don't see a lot in books, where it's like queer kids band together when we're young. Like even before we all know that we're queer, we like end up friends with each other, and then we just all come out at the same time. It's exactly what happened with my friend group. It happens in this one. It's so great to see written down. And then you have some of the characters in that group, including Chloe, who know very much their identities and are very secure in them. And then you have characters like Shara and Smith, who are still like figuring themselves out throughout the book. So you get those both of those perspectives. And it also has one of my favorite scenes I've read recently, which is just like this very casual conversation about pronouns, because one of the characters is figuring out their gender identity. And it's just very casual, like, oh, hey, also, what are your pronouns? And the other character just goes, oh yeah, it's he, him still for now, but I'll let you know if it changes. And they just go, awesome, thanks, and high five. And it's just so cute, and I love it. It's a must read, I think, for queer adults who grew up in similar situations and just get to see the hope of the next generation, and for queer kids who get to see such beauty. I love it.
Back to you, Chelsea.
All right, this is my long boy, but to be fair, when you see the book, you will see why. It is a 900-page hardcover, so I have a lot.
Amazing.
Wow. Yeah, if this is what I like to call a murder book, you could whack someone over the head with damage, but
it's like the Priory of the Orange Tree.
Oh,
yeah, exactly.
It's hard to kill someone with a Becky Chambers novella.
Yeah, doesn't work.
Yeah. So this one it's by Victoria Goddard. It's called The Hands of the Emperor and is published. She's actually an independently published author. So, and a Canadian author too, which is great. She is residing out on the East Coast, I believe. So at its core, this book is about this really profound friendship between two men, the Emperor of Astendalis, who is the sun on Earth, and he is divine. So he is subject to these really strict taboos that prohibit touch, that prohibit, you're not even supposed to look him in the eye. And the other man is his personal secretary, Cleophar, nicknamed Kip Maban, and how the bond between them really changes their world for the better. Kip is like one of my favorite characters ever. He is a cinnamon roll of a man. He is hardworking. He is passionate. He is brilliant. He is loyal, the goodest of boys, and also a true civil servant. So he is not interested in titles or in wealth, though a little bit of recognition from his family would be nice. It's just enough for him to have made the world a better place through reforms like implementing universal basic income. Yes, this is a fantasy world with universal basic income, and that makes me so excited. So even though this book is 900 pages, it never actually feels that long. I swear, I've given it to 3 people and all of us didn't feel like it felt long. I would have gladly spent even more time in this world because the characters just made me so emotional that sometimes I had to put the book down and just breathe a little bit and take a moment. I don't always take the comp titles for books very seriously. Sometimes they're kind of strange, but I had to pick up this one because it was pitched to me as Disney's Moana, a Polynesian-inspired world, wayfaring and leaving home and family to pursue an important calling, meets The Goblin Emperor by Catherine Addison, loyalty, ethics, and using power to change the world for the better, meets The West Wing, especially the quote, "Do you have a best friend? Is he smarter than you? Do you trust him with your life? That's your chief of staff." This is the accurate comparison for this book. It does actually encompass all of these things. You could even throw the musical Hamilton in there. That would also not go amiss. I was going to pick up this book anyway, obviously, or I was going to pick this as one of my choices because it's my favorite thing that I read last year. I basically have not shut up talking about it since last fall when I read this book, but I also wanted to mention it today because it is the very end of ACE Week. And this is a story that, even though the label isn't used in text, it's about an asexual protagonist, Kip, and it is written by an aspec author. So as much as I love reading stories about queer characters finding romance, as an ace person myself, I'm really grateful that there are also stories out like this out there where characters live rich and fulfilling lives that don't necessarily have to involve being in a romantic or a sexual relationship. And they have these deep, meaningful bonds with friends and family. So if, like me, you're feeling a little bit down about the state of the world these days, this is a great antidote. I totally recommend this book. It's going to appeal to science fiction and fantasy readers who are looking for lighter, more hopeful fare, character-driven rather than plot-driven, in the vein of Becky Chambers and Catherine Addison. And there's something so refreshing about a book that features a government genuinely caring for its people and working to make the world better for everyone. The optimism and the humanity and the heart in this book just restored my spirit, and I think it will restore yours as well.
I've been seeing this book everywhere, but the Vancouver Public Library doesn't have a copy. I'm going to now petition them to change that. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds amazing.
It's so good. I love it so much.
Well, in kind of continuing the vein of gender and sexuality expressions that aren't labeled as such, I have a very popular book, She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This is a historical fiction fantasy light. There are definitely fantasy elements, but I found reading it to feel more like a political intrigue historical fiction novel set in 1345 in China, fighting against the Mongols. This is the story of a young peasant girl whose brother is given a destiny of greatness and then dies. So she takes on his identity and takes on his destiny. And there's just so many interesting things here in both gender and sexuality that I loved that none of it was labeled, because obviously in 1300 they wouldn't have labels like we do today. But there's just so much playing around with her pretending to be her brother, but then internalizing some of those masculine traits. She gets into a relationship with another woman, but there are some kind of almost ace or gray sexual vibes that I get from the protagonist as well. And then there's a secondary protagonist named, what was his name? Yang. He's a eunuch, and so in his character there's a lot of gender conversation around kind of when gender identity and gender presentation is forced upon you and how that impacts his life as he's going through as the general of the enemies. This book covers decades, and it is just fascinating all the way through. A lot of power and subtle moves, and by the end you're just like both rooting and like crying, like stop to the protagonist, which I love when a book makes me feel all the feelings, and this one definitely did.
Yeah, I agree. I love that book too. That was one of the ones I wanted to honorable mention if it didn't get
we were fighting over this one.
That's true. I honorably relinquished it to you, but I'm glad you did it justice. You did it justice. Yeah, that's a great book. Okay, my next one, going back to the coziness, is one called Legends and Lattes. It's fairly new, although it was a self-published book before it was just recently picked up by Tor. It's by an author named Travis Baldry, who is an audiobook narrator, actually, and he was such given leave to like narrate his own audiobook. So it's always great when someone who's especially good at that gets to do it, because you get to hear exactly, they're taking all the characters. Anyways, it's very fantasy, leaning into orcs, goblins, dwarves, what have you, everything under the sun. It's about this woman named Viv, who's an orc barbarian adventurer, very much just like left her D&D party. And one day she was kind of in some city far away and experienced the joy that we all know to be a modern coffee shop, and all the tranquility that can come with that, and wants to recapture that feeling. So she ditches the life of being an adventurer and goes to this new city where they've never even heard of it, obviously, and starts a fantasy coffee shop, like from the ground up. So it's a matter of getting the carpenter to build it. And the whole huge part of the book is just like, there is no ancient evil, no dark lord. It's just how to get a coffee shop up and running, and staff it and deal with it. And it's just so cozy. And it's very much kind of like a Becky Chambers book, where it's like, there is definitely some tragedy, but it's nothing irreparable. And it's mostly just about good feelings. And so, it's developing the pastries, developing the different drinks and new drinks based on what customers like, and just kind of getting people to, the kind of space that a coffee shop can be. and bringing, in this fantasy world, at least, people of a lot of different kind of, races and points of view together. And her first hire and eventual business partner is a succubus named Tandri, who obviously has like kind of an effect on men, but has absolutely no interest in them. And her and Viv have that kind of slow burn romance that's like every chapter you're like, just fucking kiss already. And maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't want to spoil it, but yeah. Anyways, it's a great book. It's a great audiobook as well. And if you're looking for that kind of slice of life kind of book, it's great.
Yeah, I think I saw that Travis is working on or has finished a sequel as well, so there should be more in this universe, I think.
Yeah, it's not obviously can read as a standalone, and it doesn't like beg for a sequel, but I would be shocked obviously if there wasn't, because people are going to love these characters. So
totally.
Yeah,
I'm waiting for this one. I'm on the library holds list. I'm very excited.
It's great.
Perfect. I think you're going to like it.
I think so too.
I will also continue the cozy theme just because I'm all about romance books. I love them so much. My next one is Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly. I found this just like randomly on one of our shelves in the Bookman when I was like supposed to be shelving and said I was perusing. And it is so good, and it's such a great little romance. It's about Dahlia, who is recently divorced and identifies as queer, and London, who is eager to prove himself and he is a non-binary person, which is a really great protagonist to have because you don't see that a whole bunch. And they're competing on a cooking show together, and it's just this lovely little campy setting that's so much fun. And part of the reason I love it is because there's no like big amazing piece of literature to it. It's just like this silly little campy love story, and it just happens to be about a queer woman and a non-binary person. And I really like that we get to see ourselves in that kind of genre and just get to be in every sort of genre and get to have those silly little books. And you get some really great scenes with London and their father, because their father's not quite accepting of them, but London's very firm in their identity, and Dahlia is just questioning pretty much everything about her life except for her queerness and except for like liking London. And it's just very sweet and light again, as many of my books are. And it's just a very fun little read.
Sounds good.
I feel like I found that randomly too, actually as part of your summer book bingo challenge, because I needed an audiobook and I'm not someone who listens to audiobooks. So I was looking for something that was available and queer and sounded interesting. And I listened to that, and I actually really loved it as well.
It's so much fun.
It's so much fun. And it was almost like deeper in certain parts than I imagined, because the conversations were so well done. And
yeah, there's some really great dialogue.
I believe. Yeah, it was good.
And you're up next, Chelsea.
All right, so I'm going to go from my longest book to my shortest book. This is a little novella. It is 118 pages long. So if you are either having trouble focusing or are short on time, it's a great choice to read. It's The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nhi Vo. As both a librarian and a Black Sails devotee, as Tricia knows, I love stories about the power of storytelling and how a tale can be shaped by a teller. So it's really no surprise that I loved this book, which has those themes and uses it through a story within a story structure. It's about traveling non-binary cleric Chi, who is alongside their talking bird companion, Almost Brilliant, finds their way to an isolated villa, which was where the Empress Inyo lived in exile before the Mammoth of the North trampled the Lion of the South. There, she finds Rabbit, the now elderly beloved handmaid of the recently deceased Empress, and Rabbit is able to tell Empress Inyo's story from her arrival in the Southern Court, where she is an outsider and called a barbarian, essentially a hostage who is meant to be given in arranged marriage to become one of the emperor's many wives. And although she lacks allies and resources, Inyo is not as powerless as she seems. I love the fact that this book it's perfectly paced. It doesn't need to be any longer or shorter. It is a perfectly paced novella. It is cleverly and subtly written, and it depicts this resourceful queer woman regaining agency. It's also about the power of female friendship and stories, and it asks questions about who is important. And on a personal note, as anyone who sort of knows me is aware, I have a pet cockatiel. I am a bird person. So of course, I loved the character of Almost Brilliant, who is a talking bird with an incredible memory. If only my bird was talking and had an incredible memory to help me out.
I love that. Okay, I think because we're nearing the time and we're going to need to be closing out and switching over, I'll do my last full review and then we'll do like a lightning round of just whatever books we had left on our list. So my last full review is The Clothesline Swing by Dani Ramadan. This is a contemporary fiction novel that is especially relevant to anyone who is tuning in to support Rainbow Refugee. This is a book about a Syrian refugee who moves to Vancouver, and it's about his relationship with a man over decades. At the time that it starts, they're both aging, one of them is dying, and kind of like you were just talking about, Chelsea, it's about the stories that they tell to stay alive, both stories about their past, but often with like kind of a twist to them that you only really realize at the end how all of those stories relate to the history that we've also been getting. So this is a really excellent book. There's a lot of, it's a hard book. There's a lot of trauma, a lot of pretty devastating things happen. So be forewarned, but it is absolutely beautiful and a really good picture of what a lot of people have to go through. If that name sounds familiar, it's because I've been plugging The Foghorn Echoes is Dani Ramadan's newest book. It just came out and we have multiple copies in our silent auction that you can bid on. Dani's signed them all. He's also a local author here in Vancouver, and he runs the Night in Damascus Rainbow Refugee fundraiser, which is big in certain parts of the world. So if you've heard of that, that's him. So I highly recommend both of his books. And now, lightning round.
Okay, lightning round. I'm going to do this as fast as I can. This is another book, Tricia, and I haggled over. The Unspoken Name. It's part of a two-part series. The second book is called The Thousand Eyes, which I just finished, and I'll lend it to you next time I see you. Yes. So this, me and her share an editor. These books are phenomenal. Good luck finding a straight character in there. And they're also not like, they take place in like realms. There's not like just like a world. It's like, they're very, like almost like, yeah, it take me too long to describe it. They're really excellent, and the writing is both beautiful and kind of quippy in like a Tamsin Muir like Locktoon kind of way. I feel like those books as well. So, The Unspoken Name, A.K. Larkwood.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. My last one is A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall. It's about a trans woman who's presumed dead during the Battle of Waterloo and resumes her life. Restarts her life as a woman, and then eventually gets to fall in love with her former best friend. And it's just and she's so unapologetic and amazing in her identity, and is very sorry for like leaving him and the pain that he feels because he thought she was dead. But she's never sorry for becoming who she is meant to be. And it's just such a great book about like romance and trans identity, and it's done really well, and I love the writing.
Excellent.
Okay, and lightning round, A Memory Called Empire by Arkady Martine. I'm not going to say too much, both because we're running out of time and because both books in the duology have won Hugo Awards. So I'm sure it's fairly well known to sci-fi readers, but I want to say what I loved about it was the way that she writes the relationship between Mahit Asmar and 3C Glass, depicting the complexities of navigating like romantic and sexual attraction when it's to someone who belongs to a colonizing culture and a culture that doesn't see you as an equal. And also I love the fact that it's about cultural imperialism, not just colonialism, which there are many great books about, like The Traitor Barrow Cormorant, but especially the cultural side and the pull of falling in love with a culture that isn't your own for its language and its art and its literature. And like Mahit, who's being seduced by this culture that doesn't belong to her, as readers, we're also seduced in the same way by the importance of poetry and language, the text Kalani Empire.
Love it.
Well said.
My last one is Snapdragon by Kat Lay. This is a middle grade graphic novel, but I think excellent for all ages. I devoured it and then immediately gave it to Rachel, and she devoured it. We were both like, holy cow, that was really good. It is a book where queerness is present, but before like sexual attraction. So the goal, I heard Kat talk about it at not San Diego Comic-Con, Emerald City Comic-Con, that she wanted to represent that like the people who are protesting queer books and saying their kids shouldn't be thinking about these things. This is just a young trans kid, protagonist who's hanging out with an older woman, and they're kind of sort of witches. They bring back possums to life. It's amazing. It's just an absolute delight, really sweet, kind of about second chances and found family. And I will also just say Nimona by Nate Stevenson is a classic graphic novel that's also really, really, really good. Nate Stevenson did She-Ra TV show. So any last lightning rounds?
Iron Widow, bye.
Yeah.
Everyone in this
100%.
room will someday be dead.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that is really good. Oh,
So
One
good.
I get left off was The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez.
nice. Oh, well, let's go around, say your name one last time, and then we will sign off.
Okay,
I'm
Nicholas
Tricia.
Eames. Okay.
Yeah.
All at once, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you for everyone who watched, and yeah, those are all amazing recommendations. I'm really glad to have heard them.
Yeah. Keep going in the Sam in the order.
Sam McClean, you can find me here at the Bookman. We're in Chilliwack and Abbotsford, and any of the I'm gonna go see how much of these books we have on the shelves. I was writing them down, and I'm gonna do my best to order in some of the others that we don't have.
Nice.
I'm Chelsea, and I'm a librarian in Toronto, and I'm going to go place holds on some of these that I have not already read. It's been a real pleasure talking with all of you and getting more things to put on the ever-growing TBR.
Yes, I want to thank each of you so much. This has been wonderful. I wish next time I'm going to have to plan for like 2 hours because we could talk books for ages. I'm just going to say, Rachel, that we'll switch to the pet video, and then we'll be back.
I'm here.
Excellent.
Here. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, and then we'll be back with a D&D session. I gotta go put some flowers in my hair because I'm gonna be a himbo paladin. Stay tuned.
Yes.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.